r/AskReddit. Doctors, what is the worst homemade cure a patient used for their illness? Not a doctor, but a pharmacist who works in an ER. I had a woman come in for chest pain, and when I was interviewing her for her medication history, she was telling me how bad the pain was that she took everything in her medicine cabinet. I asked her to list what she has in her medicine cabinet, what she took. The list went: Tylenol, acetaminophen 2 tablets, Advil, ibuprofen 2 tablets, aspirin 2 tablets, heroin 1 to 2 points, Gravel. At which point I kind of had to go, hold up, you used how many points of what? And the patient very matter-of-factly stated that she came in because the heroin didn't help with the pain at all. Which in some ways I guess was a pretty reasonable course of action, since she came in since the heroin didn't work. I knew someone who got cancer and decided to starve it instead of taking chemo. First results after the 40-day fast were promising, but not for long. He died in less than a year. The sad part is, the survival rate with chemo for this type of cancer is really high, and it was detected too early. Paramedic once had a patient diagnosed with a cancerous growth on his ear. He took care of it himself with fingernail clippers. It got so infected by the time he called 911, we could see his jaw bone through his cheek. Not a doctor, but the son of one. There was a guy who would go in once a year or so for checkups. He had surgery on his foot and needed it looked at regularly. My dad was the surgeon, so. Anyways. One day guy comes in for his APPT. Says he isn't feeling well. Thinks he might have gotten the flu from his kids. No big deal. Unrelated illness happens, right? Well, he was talking to my dad before he took his shoes off. He was beaming. Yeah, I fell pretty hard, gashed my foot open. But I fixed it myself. Saved a trip to the hospital. Well, lo and behold, he has taken copper wire and sutured the gash shut. It had been a week and it was badly infected. That's where his flu-like symptoms came from. Had he waited a few more days it would have killed him. Dad took those out, dressed it, the skin had degraded too far to sew up properly, prescribed him antibiotics and referred him to the hospital for observation. He ended up spending $3,000 on his care instead of the $200 or so for stitches in the first place. Told patient to apply cream to their foot. They ignored my advice and just kept rubbing garlic over it. They later came back and I told them their foot is getting worse because they aren't using their cream and they now need to go to hospital. They ignored me and kept just rubbing garlic. Eventually they lost their foot. Dermatologist here, dude was trying to get rid of his papulopustulose acne with a homemade mask, which consisted of a mix of betamethasone ointment, honey, cream cheese, yogurt, banana, and makeup in cream for color. So many bad things here, and the dude developed a nodular cystic acne after 3 or so applications, which he did daily because of course. Who suggested this abomination? Various YouTube videos and his own initiative of mixing everything in a bowl to cure faster. I'm a paramedic and my partner told me the worst he has ever seen was for a burn patient. He said that he saw a teenager hobbling towards him covered in a bunch of white goy gunk. So apparently homeboy was out in the country trying to start a big bonfire and he first decided to douse his big bundle with some gasoline before tossing a match in. Well, it caught real fast and he got a big OL flash burn across his whole body. His mama apparently used to be a certified nurse and covered him in mayonnaise because that would help treat the burn. Yeah, nah, all she did was introduce a ductin of infection into his body and make it much more excruciating for him when my partner had to wipe it off of him and place burn bandages on him while they transported him to the hospital. Nurse here. Had the fortunate luck to be privy to a patient's super-duper secret way of getting rid of leg cramps at night. Get a cork, not just any cork though, it must be from a bottle of red wine, and tuck it in between your toes at night. He was very sure that was the cure that Big Pharma wasn't telling us. Completely irrelevant that he started taking a magnesium supplement at the same time as his newfound super cure of toe cork fondling. So Big Pharma, if you're reading this, we all know now. My mom, a psychiatric nurse practitioner, has a patient who smokes meth because it's the only thing that helps them sleep. Here's a twist to the question. I actually have a home remedy that worked better than what the gave me. I was working as a lifeguard at a Boy Scout camp. The swimming pier was made of creosote-soaked telephone poles and then whatever lumber on top. I had been setting up the swim area or something and got some of the creosote on my face. That stuff reacts horribly in the sun. It started cooking my skin really bad. I ended up at the and they gave me some cream that didn't do anything. I made it back to the camp and the camp ranger took a look at me. He was some old redneck who had been there and done that. He was retired military, I think, but pretty much seemed to know everything about everything. He took one look at my face and told me to make a paste out of baking soda and water and put it on before I went to bed. It worked, the burning stopped. Just now upon a Google search I read that creosote is acidic and so it makes sense that baking soda would neutralize it. I don't know how this guy knew that, glad he did though. Side story. We also kept a homemade solution around made of 1/3 water, 1/3 rubbing alcohol, and 1/3 white vinegar. We used it to clear water out of swimmers' ears to keep them from getting infected. It worked well. Not a doctor but my vet friend once had a client rub butter all over her cat in hopes that the cat would lick it off because the cat had stopped eating. Doctor in the family told me an infant was brought into the incredibly ill, shaking, and vomiting from her daycare. She had a huge oral ulcer in her mouth that her mom tried to cure by killing the bacteria but they were out of mouthwash so she diluted vodka in apple juice. She had the "can I see the manager" haircut and threw a huge fit when CPS was called. A couple elected to pray instead of getting their 10-year-old daughter an appendectomy. She died horribly and the parents avoided a murder charge because a sheriff department person was okay with their cult churches not believing in doctors and covered it all up. A fellow member of the church, they are living their lives today with no fear of punishment for killing their daughter. It's the same church that had people in it tried and convicted for murder in Idaho. Followers of Christ Church, I'd love to see justice for them, but I doubt anything will stick. Seeing them dance around all over town without a care in the world chills me to the bone. Just makes me so mad they're getting away with murder. Daughter was cool AF and was likely an atheist. Her death was a shock to everyone at school, but I didn't learn about all that BS church poop until I was an adult. Statute of limitations. Not a doctor, I'm an X-ray tech in a hospital. Had a patient with a breast infection. She attempted to treat it with Neosporin. When she finally came to the there was just a huge gaping hole on her chest where the breast used to be. The smell in the room was overpowering to say the least. It turns out you can't cure breast cancer with Neosporin. I don't know if she survived or not. Had a patient who couldn't sleep because she had gotten bug bites on her legs keeping her awake. Her cure. She poured boiling water on them. Gave herself third-degree burns to treat her bug bites. I'm a CNA working on becoming a nurse, but I work alongside them daily. Had a male that came into the hospital complaining about his backside. Had a huge ulcer and was determined to be a complication from him being diabetic. He adamantly refused that he was diabetic and would not allow the hospital to treat him for diabetes because he was a truck driver and if he had to take insulin he would lose his license apparently. So he kept insisting that he just needed some, in his words, salve to put on this giant ulcer because he's done it before and it worked fine, so he said. Results came back from the ulcer and found he had MRSA, which was causing it to be even worse. He refused to believe the multiple doctors that tried to help him understand that he was diabetic, needed to treat that and needed to treat MRSA with a hardcore antibiotic regimen. He refused, checked himself out AMA, then showed back up like 2 weeks later in an ambulance that a friend called for him because he went septic and was in a real bad way. Why do you go to the hospital just to refuse everything that doctors and nurses have seen for years? He was putting bacitracin on his decubitus ulcer with MRSA in it, until he basically couldn't move because he was drained of all energy. Ended up having a whole lot of his buttock removed. Not sure what happened to him after that. Not a doctor yet, but work in EMS. The number of folks who think WD-40 will help arthritis pain is abnormally high. Also, though this is not explicitly a home remedy, but the people who think things will just cure themselves with time. Yes, this works sometimes. Yes, healthcare is financially prohibitive, but if something has been debilitating you for more than approximately 72 hours, it probably won't be going away anytime soon. Just go get it checked, it's cheaper to treat something over time than to go, "Oh duck, I suddenly need 500K for this procedure or I'm gonna die." Not a doctor. I work at a grocery store deli. One lady, who is a regular, is convinced that magnets cure body ailments. She has magnets in her car and occasionally she'll make a big show of being unable to breathe. She is fine, and don't call the ambulance. She will walk all the way outside to her car, bring the chintzy fridge magnets back inside to our back corner. Then by rubbing the magnets on her chest through all of layers of clothes she is cured and doesn't need the paramedics or medical help. And don't get her started on how oranges and vitamins are the cure for autism. Really, don't. I will slap your hand so hard.